Yesterday in writing, we started talking about how to analyze a poem or how to look at a poem and understand it. That's what analyze means, how to look at it and understand it. And there are 8 steps that we need to remember whenever we're doing that. The first is to observe the poem. Just look at it, not reading it, just looking at it. Is it short? Is it long? Does it have pictures that go with it? And what stands out to you as you look over it? So some poems will have interesting ways that they've written a word to show movement, or some poems will have a super long line and then a super short line. It kind of depends on how the poet was feeling when they wrote that. And they did what they did for a specific purpose. So it's important for us to take a moment and just look at the poem and see what stands out to us. The second thing you're going to do is using a Post-it. We don't have Post-its. Or if your teacher allows you, write all of your thoughts down on the poem as you navigate through. We are writing our poems down in our journal. So I want you to write your thoughts down as you read through the poems. Write in your journal. What are you thinking after you read? Okay? We need to make connections to the title. The title of a poem gives us a clue as to what the poem is going to be about. It almost gives us the main idea. So we need to make connections to that. It could be a text-to-self connection. How does that title make you think of yourself? It could be text-to-text. Does the title make you think of another book or something you've read? Or it could be text-to-world, something you have seen throughout your day-to-day goings about. So text-to-world. Then we're going to read the poem. And then we're going to go line by line and think about what the poet or speaker or narrator of the poem is trying to communicate and determine the main idea. What is the poem about? Next, we're going to identify any poetic devices. And we have a list of poetic devices that we're working from. Okay, we know some of them. We know stanza. Yesterday we learned about tone and imagery and metaphor. And we're going to learn the rest of these as well. Okay? So we look for poetic devices. And then finally, we reread as many times as we need to make sense of the poem. Some poems are short, some poems are long. Sometimes they use language that we might not be familiar with. So we need to take time and reread. Rereading is a huge strategy, especially in poetry, but in reading in general. So rereading to help it make sense. Okay, yesterday we talked about 3 different poetic devices. We talked about tone. And tone is the feeling or emotion that a poem conveys to the reader. So how does the poem make you feel? We also discussed imagery. Remember, imagery is what picture do you get in your mind whenever you are reading a poem? What pictures pop up in there? And imagery uses our 5 senses. It uses sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing. Things that the poet wants you to see in your mind, they will normally describe through using 5 senses or sensory language. So imagery, what picture do you get in your head? Oh, and then metaphors. A metaphor is a comparison. It's comparing 2 things that are so not alike, like comparing a person to a building. Or let's say we're comparing a person to an animal. He is a cheetah on the racetrack. Well, we know that cheetahs are really fast animals, so we can compare a person to a cheetah if they are a very fast runner. So he is a cheetah on the racetrack. That would be a metaphor. Okay? So we learned all 3 of these poetic devices yesterday, looking at this poem, Dreams by Langston Hughes. And we drew a picture as far as imagery goes. We determined a metaphor, and we talked about the tone of this poem. Today in writing, I've made some changes to this poem actually, because I want you to think about how you can change the tone of a poem by changing the words in a poem. You can change the images that your reader sees by the words that you choose to use. And then metaphors are a way to describe something to your reader. So in your work today, you are going to think about how we could change the tone of the poem. You're going to think about what image you see after I change the words in the poem. And you're also going to write a metaphor. There's a short lesson on metaphors for you to watch, and then you're going to write your own metaphor comparing two things that I've chosen for you. So make sure that you're really thinking through what tone is. Make sure you're thinking through what imagery is and what kinds of things you see as you read through the poem today. We're still working with Dreams by Langston Hughes, so you don't have another poem to write down in your journal. But really think through the questions on your writing page today. And I am so looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with.